singer, and don't put the expectation too high because I will not sing. I have no photo work. But on the other hand, I think I have some interesting information and figures about Indonesia today and where the international community sees Indonesia going, and believe me, it's quite impressive. But before I'm talking about that, I will give you a small introduction about what I did the last 23 years in Indonesia. First of all, how did I came to Indonesia? After my university degree, I went for an MBA, and after the MBA I had a post-universal degree in business consultancy. And right after my studies I became marketing manager in a French group called Matra, where I was responsible for the sales and implementation of the computer sites behind computer-guided missiles and bombs. We signed deals around the globe with India, Argentina and so on. But my wife found it quite ugly marrying a husband selling bombs and missiles. Therefore she asked me to go for a softer job. And indeed I was asked to join a young German company called in those days Nixdorf Computer. And my challenge was to build out their international sales worldwide. When I joined them, they were 2,000 workers, and when we sold off the company to Siemens, we were 70,000 collaborators. As a young third year in those days, I felt too young to retire, and for the fun I bought an importing company in furniture and decorative items. This decision brought me in Indonesia. As first player in the market, we started building teak garden furniture in mid-Java, Jepara, Indonesia. And today they say in Jepara that my company was the one who brought garden furniture production tradition in the country. Now you have to imagine that 23 years ago, and the younger generation here present will not remember those days, but 23 years ago, and we may not forget, but I can remember it as yesterday, Indonesia was a whole other country than today. For instance, in an industrial town with 3 million inhabitants, we had perhaps 10 phone lines, so you had one person queuing up all day at Wartel, till you had your turn to give your one international phone call. In the whole city we had no forklifts, no electricity. We had one little small hotel called Radisson, and in that hotel we had no air conditioning, of course. We had no hot water service. My best bet were the rats, and in the evening we were drinking tonloads of beer because that was the only pleasure we had. Now, today we live in quite other Indonesia, I think so. And since in those days the government services were pretty poor, we had sort of micro economies being all over the country installed. I give you one practical example. I had one factory in Kadumpani, which is up the hill Semarang, and we have one waterway which goes to the sea between the city and that area. And when it is rain season, that one bridge there is flooding, washing away each time. So the army proposed to rebuild it because before the funds and the materials were coming from Jakarta, probably half the season was already over. And after some years, a new commander came up and said, listen, what? If you pay me up front, we will make sure the bridge is not washing away during rain season. Now, I agree there was a lot of wrongdoing in the past, but today everybody will start screaming that this is, let's say, corruption, and that this is against the law, and we will find in the newspaper all kinds of tricky stories. But people, let's stay practical, and don't forget where we are coming from in Indonesia. We are coming from a country with very limited possibilities financially, and we had to build out a country with practical means. So sometimes the line between wrongdoing and corruption and being practical and getting things done was very, very thin and very slim. And if we criticize today the government, or if we criticize certain actions being taken, don't forget this elementary thing. And don't forget that there are still people now in charge which has been born in this situation and are still partially living it. Now, 10 years later, after I came to Indonesia, I was having the biggest sawmill in Southeast Asia, cutting over 100,000 cubic meter of timber a year. Now, 100,000 cubic meter of timber, that's a pile of timber from 1 meter high, 1 meter large, from Hasselt to Brussels and back. So, to give you a slight idea. We had over 4,500 workers in several factories, and the main factory was situated in the Damak area, having 130,000 square meters of premises. Funny sight, we had one of the biggest mosques in the area, because we had all those people praying sometimes together in one mosque. We had our own private clinic. It were beautiful days. We were exporting a quality product over more than 9 countries, giving 15 years of warranty. Nobody had the guts in this business to do so, but we could do it easily, and we still do it today. And we found an ideal mix between perfect good quality of goods, natural resources we could get in Indonesia, Jati, and nevertheless we produced to international standards. And all that time, each time again, I felt a little bit guilty that the international standards had to come out of my part of the business, out of my part of the management. And all those years, we tried more and more to learn our people what are international standards, what an international community is expecting from packaging, marketing, and go so on. And still, I have to be honest with you today, it is a struggle, and there is still a long way to go, but the figures and my explanations later on will make you clear that at the end of the tunnel there is light, even bright light. We always said in the factory, and it's not too far away from unity into diversity, together strong, do better, we do better. And believe me, we had hash times. I remember when the Suharto regime was pushed away, together with the Asian crisis, the country was devastated. I mean, banks weren't functioning anymore. We had to go to Singapore to get rupiahs to pay the workers in big trunks. Imagine a bit, you have to go to Singapore to get rupiahs. It was a tremendous situation. We had bad moments by changed labor laws, which were at that moment much too aggressive and not reality. A lot of international companies, multinational companies left the country because one of the laws was if there was a strike in your factory, you couldn't stop it. You could go in jail as being the general manager. Now we in Belgium, we don't take that too literally, but if you say that to an American citizen, he's already leaving. So quite some multinationals left the country. But in fact the population was busy with other things. Getting to democracy, learn to vote, learn to build out a country where everybody has his speaking voice. And it took its time, let's be honest. But in the meantime, lawmakers were working hard to get new modern laws in place, a stable financial system, and I have to admit, and I saw it very much in Mid-Java, the whole nation was working hard with a moderated income in the hope for a good future. I saw many, many people giving their last rupiah to make their children study, to make sure they had a good education degree, so that they could be somebody in the world of after that change in regime. And if we see today, we will come back on it when we look to the figures, that has been a good judge and a good investment. Bit by bit, foreign investors came back to the country. Although I have to admit, in all those years, even the shaky years, my investments in Indonesia were never in danger. I never had one single moment, a law coming up or a threat coming up that would make me losing my investment, losing my assets. And ladies and gentlemen, the fact that you are willing to do something for your country is fantastic in itself already. But if I have one big message for you, please make sure the international community understands that Indonesia is one of the most interesting and sexy countries in Southeast Asia to invest money, because you are 100% owner of your company. The added value of your estate and the value of your investments are totally protected, not only by law, but also by applying the law. So I think this is a point which is Indonesia not selling enough, and it should be brought more to the attention of people. I am the lucky owner of 2 factories in China too. Well, lucky and unlucky, because I know the day I will pull back the added value of my land and my factory, I have to split it up with my local partner. And again, in Indonesia, I don't have any local partner. I'm 100% owner, and I decide everything on my own. I take my risk like I want, and I take my profit like I want. As you know, our president was yesterday on the G20 in Mexico. Indonesia is already in the G20. Belgium, for instance, is not. And if it goes like this, Spain will be not anymore, and Italy won't be anymore. Anyway, it is not a sort of a dream, but we can be absolutely sure that Indonesia will be part of the 10 biggest economies of the world by 2020. And if we talk about the actual growth, which was already mentioned by our colleague, 6.7 to 7% GDP growth a year, I hear in Jakarta all kinds of miracle histories and stories and very complicated economic explanations, but my experience is that economy, after all, it's not an exact science, point one, and secondly, if you can't explain it very easy, it has no explanation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the explanation is very, very, very simple. Indonesian people love each other very much, and due to that fact, there is a huge, huge young population. And 60% of the population is under 39 years old. And if you look to the demography of Indonesia, it's like this. A lot of young people who can care about their parents. And if you look to China, it's the other way around. It's a lot of old people caring about very few young people. And believe me, in my factories in China, if I need workers, it's always a hassle. It's days of discussion, of search, of discussing about salaries. People walk away all the time because they get 5 pennies more next door. In Indonesia, I got, and that's hot from the needle, this morning, a Chinese company made this final decision to build a factory of 538 hectares in Semarang. I know Semarang pretty well, of course. So we talk about a factory of 5,380,000 square meters. I can swear to God this is a serious factory, if you have ever seen one in your life. And why do you think a Chinese company is investing in Indonesia? Not because they like the Indonesians so much. No, simply because they know this factory will be filled up in 2 months with all the workers they ever can dream. If they build such a factory in China, there is no need because our massively factories empty for the moment, but you simply will not find the workers. So that's one of the biggest assets today of Indonesia. It's this young population. They are not only young, they are also schooled. They are not only schooled, but they are also disciplined. 2 weeks ago I was in a remote area making a trip to a mangrove, and I jumped into 12 or 14 kids from a high school in Jakarta. The way those kids talk with you, the respect they show, the questions they ask, that's how we dream our good kids would be today in Europe. That was the generation before. So all those kids are ready to get into the circuit. They are motivated to do their schooling, and it is the big silent secret of Indonesia. And the economic success and economic growth, people, okay, there are other things playing, like a stable financial system, a democracy, a good political system today. But the basic reason why this country has prosperity in front of it is because there are a lot of young people who will be hard workers tomorrow. And look to Europe. What is our problem in Europe? Well, we are just not working hard enough. That's the whole situation going on. You can make very complicated economic deductions by banks going broke and lending too much and whatever you want, but it's always back to basics. And back to basics is working first, spending later. Another important point of the economic growth, and everybody says so and it's a right fact, the economic growth of Indonesia, around 7%, is a very sustainable one, because the biggest part of it is domestic consumption. And there again, a lot of people say, haha, but we have a sustainable growth. Yes, we have. But if we want a double-digit growth and a sustainable growth in the future, we have only one solution, that is upgrading export. Because at domestic consumption, somewhere, there is an end. You can't upgrade domestic consumption till the end. So there is only one exit for Indonesia, and there is time and money available now, but this time and money should be used to prepare the country for real export. We have the people of Pertamina oil here, we can have people out of the commodity business here, and I will say something very ugly, but exporting minerals and exporting basic commodities is making an economy lazy. Look to Saudi Arabia, look to Qatar, all those countries, go to Dubai, you only see concrete and something that will be there for 50 or 100 years and then it's over the game. But what is making a country rich is education, technology, investing in people. A country is people after all. And if you're just selling off your minerals, what is the added value for your economy? Nothing. If you're upgrading your agricultural activities, well, there you learn a lot of people. Look to a country like France, it became big by its agricultural activities, not by its industrial activities. That's the base, the beginning of everything. And if you look to Indonesia, each time I feel pain in my heart if I'm going from Semarang to Kudus and I see all those ladies in the rice fields planting rice one by one. Well, in a country like Australia, 100 or 1,000 hectares of rice fields are run by one person on one tractor. So I mean, see the difference. Again, Indonesian export is predicted to grow 9.7 at 10.8 percentage, and I want to come back on that point. It is true, it is absolutely feasible to do so. If you look to the size of the country, the people, the age, the GDP today, I say yes, the country can go there. But again, yeah, that's a slide where we see the G20, where Indonesia is in the 1% club. This slide is an interesting one, and if all the slides I saw in Jakarta, there's one slide you should keep on in your mind. Here you see the international community and its consumption behavior today. And as you see, the middle class is spending in the US in 2009 5.5 trillion, in 2030 5.6 trillion. Europe, 8.1, is going to 11.1. This is only thanks to the new European countries, the old Eastern countries. But look to Asia. Asia will go from 4.9 trillion to 32 trillion spending. Now people, these are not statistics made by the government of Indonesia or by one or another think tank somewhere in Southeast Asia. No, it's Price Waterhouse, an Anglo-Saxon oriented based consultancy firm. So I can give everybody one big advice. You can import out of Indonesia and Asia, of course, but don't forget to export there, because it's the export and consumption market of the future. These figures are really astonishing, and it's not based on one or another dream or fake figures. It's where we go. If you take the other slide about investments, it's even more speaking. If you look at investments in Asia, Southeast Asia, 42% of the GDP is reinvested. Yeah? Well, if you look to Europe, only 20%. If you talk about problems, economic problems in the European community, that are the problems. We don't invest enough in technology, in new systems, in new factories, in new businesses. Here we see that Indonesia is the third largest grower in the world if we talk about GDP growth. We say only China and India go faster, but there is one proverb we say about China. There are lies, there are big lies, and there are Chinese statistics. So, I'm everything I see with my own eyes, and if I follow the financial press, believe me, I don't believe that China has today 9.5% growth. And her problems are coming up, problems I don't see at all in a country like Indonesia. This is an interesting slide too, only to tell you, don't worry today, because if you look to 2010 and you look to 2050, it's only 2050 they predict that the workforce in Indonesia will decline. So there is quite some generations to go and some investments to do before we are 2050 and we get a problem with the workforce. One of the slides, which is for the international community, one of the most speaking, you have to know, if you talk to good financial experts, they will tell you that two types of bonds are interesting to buy today. that are Indonesian bounds and the bounds of a country like Brazil. Everything in the world else than those are less well off. And look only in the Asian region, Singapore, the big tiger, only 1 year of work indebted, the government. Indonesia, only 26% indebted. I agree, Indonesia had bad times and learned by hard school what it is overspending. But imagine a bit the space, the air that the Indonesian government has to implement investment programs compared with a lot of other countries. So you have to understand that this is an extreme healthy situation for a government. And it's not only a healthy situation, the government gets this healthy situation in times where we all have the bad examples. Indonesia knows damn well that what the private sector is doing well, the government should not do, because they will do it better. They have to bring the platform, they have to bring the ideas, but you have to pull off again. And if you see in the long year investment plan of the government, you will see that one of the major points is to find co-investors, partners. So a lot of government projects are now already made up with the thought, we are not looking to invest the money, no, we are looking for partners to invest together with us in those projects. Now, it's of course not all good news. It is a big challenge, and we know that one of our biggest problems in Indonesia is the poor infrastructure. On the aviation side, we made good progress. As you know, Lion Air signed the largest deal with Boeing ever, 119 planes in one go. And believe me, Boeing are not that stupid that they will sign a deal with an airliner which is not able to pay its bill. But we all know that we are missing tremendous kilometers of highways in Indonesia. Java, they have to triple at least the infrastructure of the highways to make it a little bit upscale, up to date. We were talking this morning about transportation by rail. There's a lot to do about transportation by rail. Although in all this, there is one positive, very positive point, and I compare it with telephone business in the old days. Remember, we had to queue up at Wartel to have an international call being done. Indonesia skipped the fixed line story. The day they had to solve the problem, we had the handphone story coming up, and we don't have a telephone problem anymore today because we're using all handphones, and bit by bit we could get the other thing straight. One big advantage of Indonesia is it is one big long sausage, and on all sides and on all places you can make as much harbors as you wish. So the waterways are the solution for the country, especially when we talk about transport of goods. And you will see in the coming years that there are quite some new projects going on to build local harbors with specific functions to overcome that problem. Another thing is bureaucracy and corruption. There is a lot of corruption, and there has been a lot of corruption, and I think there are a lot of countries with a lot of corruption. And Indonesia, if you were doing these presentations this morning, it was a typical Indonesian thing going on, having a good laugh. Well, with corruption it's the same thing in Indonesia. It is there, but we can speak about it and we can have a laugh about it. Not that it is always so funny, but at least it's not something which is denied by the government. The government is inviting you to talk about it. The government is inviting you to speak up and to bring it up. And I see a tremendous mentality change by the young people. Young people have not been born or used to live with pocket money, side money. And you see it in the tax administration, you see it in custom administration. If you have a young guy in front of you, don't try to bribe him because he says flatly no. Yeah? So I think corruption will die away by being tougher on it on the one side, but it's also a mentality change. Younger people understand that corruption is in fact taking away opportunities and possibilities for other people. So I think another 5 to 10 years from now, corruption will be at the same level it is all over the world. Bureaucracy, I admit, it is still difficult to found foreign companies, but on the other hand, Indonesia is an extreme big country with 3 time zones, being 8,000 kilometers long. Try a bit to get all that together and to keep it controllable. You need, and there's nothing to do about it, you need serious laws to keep it all together. And as last point, and then I will close my presentation, I think we have a beautiful and a good voted package of infrastructure investments coming up. Our ambassador worked hard 2 months ago with having a European group of investors here together with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which country in the world can say today that they have $468 billion investments being voted and planned, having the money to execute those investments? Not too much in these hard times. Indonesia is planning it, the budgets are there. If you look to the figures, it is feasible and it will be done. And believe me, if these investments are behind, you will see tremendous changes coming up. If you hear about the plans being developed now already, each time they are nicely dedicated into the right slot where they are needed. So I hope within 5 years we see a dramatic change on that level. And for those who want to invest in Indonesia, 25 years ago, and you compare with today, your investments were juicy, but still it is time today to go to Indonesia and to invest money. Because with all the figures we know and everything we see in the growth, if you invest in real estate, you invest in factories, you invest in production units, you will not regret your investment in 10 years from now. It will be seriously growing and surely with a better rate than what we see on world level. Thank you for your attention.